Okay, so one of the main things that we're going to have to be able to determine is if I give you an angle measurement, you're going to know whether a certain trig value is positive or negative. And you're going to know it like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. That's where you need to be at by the end of this chapter, and definitely when you go into your class next year. So now we're going to talk about, I'm going to do a couple pictures here, but we're going to talk about if I draw a triangle in the first quadrant, and I want sine, cosine, or tangent, I'm going to use these guys. So here's the angle that we're always looking at. So this is my opposite side, this is my hypotenuse, and this is my adjacent. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Let me go ahead and erase that. Okay, so now let's do this, and what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and erase this guy. Okay? This guy is actually what coordinate? This guy is an x value. Okay? So now I'm going to get rid of that opposite sign, and hopefully you're saying to yourself, well, this is a y coordinate. Okay, great. Oh, a little too, nobody knows what that is. Okay, hold on a second here. Let me clean this up. A little bit of a mix up there. So let's go ahead and change the thickness of the pen. This is a y. And our hypotenuse, I'm just going to cross it out, is a radius. Okay, well, in the first quadrant, is x positive or negative? Well, x is always positive over on this side, and is y positive or negative? It's positive, right? If I had some point anywhere in the first quadrant, so if I had a point here, this point would be a positive. We don't know what the numbers are, but they'd both be positive. So that means in the first quadrant, sine is positive, cosine is positive, and its tangent is positive, because the way I mix these up, they're always positive numbers over positive numbers. So if I do that same thing here, well, this guy is going to be positive, this guy is going to be positive, right? This would be a positive y, this would be a positive r, radius is always positive, but this would be a negative x value. So if I'm in the second quadrant, well, sine would be my opposite, which is positive, over my radius, which is positive. So sine would be positive. Okay, well, what about cosine? Okay, well, let's look at cosine. Well, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, the adjacent side is negative, so a negative over a positive is negative. And so what about tangent? Well, tangent is opposite over adjacent. Well, I got a positive over a negative. So that's going to be negative. And I could go through this, each quadrant individually, and set this up and keep on doing the same thing. Okay, but that would take too much time. I'm already at 3.5 minutes here, and I don't want to make a super long video. So really, all we have to realize is that, you know, these different functions, right, are going to be positive or negative based on the positive or negative values. Let me erase that because that doesn't look like any symbol. Okay, so notice what I'm doing here is I'm writing coordinates, and I'm just identifying that, okay, right here, x is positive, y is positive. X is negative, y is positive. I don't know why I had to think about that. X is negative, y is negative. X is positive, y is negative. Okay, so that simplifies it a little bit. So then I can go through and really know that, you know, sine is x over r and all that other stuff. Okay, so sine is really x over r. So if I look at all of these, well, if I do, r is always positive, so I got a positive over a positive, negative over a positive, negative over a positive, positive. Okay, so I can go through that whole process. And that simplifies it. We don't have to draw a bunch of stuff, but, you know, it's still a little bit more thinking involved. So I'm going to make it even easier than that. So we use this thing. we write ASTC, and it stands for all students take calculus. Okay, so if you remember, all students take calculus. The first initial of each word is the letters that we do here. So that means that in the first quadrant, all are positive. In this one, sine is positive, tangent is positive, and cosine is positive. And so if you remember that, that tells you where all the trig values are positive. So for example, how do I know if something's negative? If sine is positive, its reciprocal function is positive, so sine and cosecant are positive, but every single trig value besides those two would be negative. So if we remember where they're positive, all the others are negative. And that's all you have to go by.